Hey, everybody, we're live, and I'm with Dr. Jennifer Tran, my friend here, and so she's running for Congress against another friend of mine, Barbara Lee, our current Congresswoman. Uh, Too many, I got a lot of friends out there, but
I'm
but
actually running against Latifah Simon.
hey,
Representative Barbara Lee is not in this race.
uh, thank you very much. Although you're absolutely, I'm absolutely right, absolutely right, very much aware. But you and Barbara are both my friends, so. um, but this is about the story of Dr. Tran, her run for Congress, and also a press conference she gave recently because her background falls into the matter, parenthetically, of the controversy around Mayor Tao. Without any more comment from me, Dr. Tran, take it away.
Yes. Good afternoon, Zenny and friends of Zenny. I'm Dr. Jennifer Tran, and just sitting here, really excited to just share about what's been happening in the last week. Has it been a week yet? It's been, I
Um,
think, now 7 days, no, 8 days, 8 days
eight
since the
days.
FBI raid of Mayor Sheng Thao's house. But I think that while all of our attention is on the raid itself, it's easy for us to forget how we got here. And since the raid has happened, less than 12 hours after the shootings on Juneteenth, the night before, you know, what's been on most of our mind has been public safety in Oakland. Why is it when we look around our neighboring cities that that concern isn't as heightened and intense, right? And so when I heard about the FBI raids, I was shocked because it seems unreal that this is happening, and specifically to our city. And it seems like our city can't get a break. And so given my work with the business community and the lens that I bring as an ethnic studies professor, I felt like it was really important to chime in and provide some context for what was happening, and specifically how we arrived to this point, right? And so, for those who don't know, my name is again Dr. Jennifer Tran. I'm an ethnic studies professor at Cal State East Bay. I am the president of the Oakland Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce, and I am running for Congress to represent District 12 from cities Albany all the way to San Leandro, Oakland, Berkeley. Um, uh, did I say, Emeryville, Piedmont, and everything in between. And this race has been underreported and unevenly reported, given that a lot of assumptions around who is already early coronated in this seat, and that happens to be Latifah Simon. But it was a crowded race, and March 5th, the voters voted to see that they wanted a real election, a fair and transparent election. That's what I've been pushing for in this race, to have someone who's going to prioritize the local. Obviously, this is a safe Democratic seat, but the vision for the seat, whoever holds that, is going to carry us into a direction either for better or for worse or the same. And so it's around the challenges that I've been personally affected by, my family members. If you remember last summer, there was an older couple in
Yes.
Leona Heights. They were robbed at gunpoint in their own home, and my nephews were held 3 years old and 3 months old. And that's just one of the harrowing stories that we hear here in the East Bay and in Oakland. And so the challenges around public safety and homelessness, the closure of small businesses, the lack of government transparency has really made it impossible for me not to step into this race, given that I'm an Oakland native, and to see folks that I care about and work with every single day, whether it is as an advocate and champion on the ground, as a chamber president, or teaching as students. It was impossible for me to sit out, understanding that the party had already made its choice, that was going to choose Latifah Simon, a colleague of mine who I deeply respect, and as a powerful intellectual and charismatic organizer. But she has been the major force behind the defund the police movement here in the Bay Area and statewide, and has ran her entire has has ran her entire career as a restorative justice organizer, which I believe with in theory. But given the challenges we face during the pandemic around violence, in addition to police reform, it was really important for us to have policies that were well thought out, well executed, and the defund the police movement of that took place during the summer of 2020 has led us to a lot of these challenges that we're still reeling from, and many people have already left the Bay Area because it feels like it's impossible to stay in here. And so for the FBI raid on Mayor Sheng Thao's house was really the culmination of a series of policies, failed policies under her leadership and the council that has been unaccounted for. And I would say unaccounted for not just in the city of Oakland, the council, but to our DA and the person who is supposedly our next congressperson, Latifah Simon. And so I found it very disheartening that all of our focus was on this raid and specifically the Duong families. And if you remember the first 48 hours, any folks were like saying Rebecca Cavan's house got raided and City Hall got raided. We just didn't have any facts. And given
Unless they looked at zenniesreport.com and they got the facts and found out that the mayor is actually camped down her office. We have pictures of
that's right.
her boyfriend going in. So yeah, we were on top of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for providing that because we miss so much when we follow just like corporate media and what's out there and looking at social media and it really turned us into this tailspin of frenzy. And I had folks calling and texting from Atlanta and Seattle like, what's going on with your city? Why is Oakland always on the news for the wrong reason? Right? And so, but while this is happening, we are not hearing from our electeds besides, a canned statement and, 4 days without hearing from our own mayor. We already went through 18 months without a chief of police, right? We've already missed a major grant that would have helped address, organized retail theft and additionally to that, continue to look at this budget crisis having imminent impacts on our sense of safety for the years to come. And so I felt, in addition to this conversation around budget deficit, it was absolutely necessary to talk about leadership deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership deficit that isn't just unique to Oakland, but we can't leave Oakland out of it. And so originally, I was thinking of hosting a press conference with colleagues who have shared similar dismay, similar frustrations, who are leaders who are working on the positivity in our city and really believe in collaboration and compromise, right, to organize this press conference. And folks are saying, I can't be seen. I can't be public about my distress with the council or with Mayor Sheng Thao. You know how I feel, Jen. I held over and over. You know how I feel, but I can't be seen. There will be repercussions for this. I have already been penalized for speaking out. I do not have a job because of this. I've had contracts taken away. I've been excluded from meetings and all these challenges that people were sharing, I've experienced personally too. But I was done with the lies that the media was like sharing too, specifically talking about I was a consultant for Mayor Sheng Thao. And I told folks in the media when I spoke to them that I worked on the campaign when she was running for District 4 for 3 weeks. It took me less than 3 weeks to realize that this is not the leadership that I want to see in the city. And yet, even today, right, there's still papers saying former campaign consultant Jennifer Tran, trying to find its way to link whatever person to this larger investigation. And so given the climate, the political climate in Oakland, and folks who feel like they couldn't speak out, I felt like something needs to be said. And so I organized that press conference standing alone on those steps and, within 24 hours and saying, I'm here to tell the truth and the whole truth, not just about this FBI raid, but the
Mm-hmm.
state and the culture of corruption in the city of Oakland that is not unique to Oakland. But given this is my hometown and place that I really decided to return to after my PhD to teach, you know, first generation students like myself, and that I had to fight for it. And so I organized a press conference that had probably like 12 news stations come out and just walked folks through from the current state of corruption in Oakland and how it fits into a larger structure of a political machine that operates through this contribution structure in which if you don't give me money, then you're nobody. You're not worth talking to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how it works. I remember my first time working on a campaign here in Oakland, it was 2016. And I said, let's focus on immigrants and refugees. They said, they don't vote, so we're not going to focus on them. They don't give any money. We're not going to focus on them. And so this it's easy to say pay to play, but really the democracy that we talk about oftentimes is for those who can afford it, those who can actually participate in that way. And so I spent some time talking about how this structure of corruption breeds more inequalities, and we
Mm-hmm.
understand that. And then I walked through how is it that the Duong family, and also including Mayor Sheng Thao, you
Mm-hmm.
know, are part of the system that shouldn't just be seen specifically focused on them, but a larger structure of there is no other playbook. This is how it's been done, how contracts have been given, how folks have been able to hold appointed seats, uh, how who's invited to what and decisions that they can actually shape. And then talked about the difference between VABA, the Vietnamese American Business Group, that's under question in my own chamber, the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce in Oakland. And our community is so small, Zenny. It's so
Mm-hmm.
small that like everybody knows everybody. And so I did
Oh.
talk about that legacy and how is it that even if the Duong family is significant in this community, that there's a lot of diversity in our community as well. And that if there is any legal violation from the Duong's family, including my father, they will be held accountable and
Mm-hmm.
they should be prosecuted. I said that, right? I said I ran on accountability, I ran on transparency, I ran on solving problems. And it starts with not just folks who commit crimes, politicians, police, but personally. If I commit a crime, then I'm going to be held accountable. So stating that and then talking about, but let's talk about the true crime here, the
Mm-hmm.
larger crime in that we're seeing around us that
Well,
folks are
before we
again.
go there, I want you to talk to me like we're friends.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
take your spiel off, because yeah, seriously, because we and I talked a bit ago,
Hmm.
like the whole thing with Shang.
Hmm.
You gave me a short, angry, straight on, concise, real story. And so I'm going to ask you right here, why don't you tell the viewers what you told me regarding how the court documents associate you as a campaign consultant for Sheng Thao when she was council member? Please.
Thanks, Jenny. It's because folks weren't there. And so I was just trying to walk them through. But you're right in terms of, one, people's attention span and, the heart of the matter. And from I think it was within 24 hours of the FBI raid, some of the news started covering me as Sheng Tao's campaign consultant.
Yeah.
And in my press
That
conference,
way with the 2020 court document, so they saw that,
yeah.
zeroing in on it. So
And actually, that's the reason why I reached out to you to
yeah,
clarify, right, Zenny? It's like, hey,
yeah.
Zenny, this is Jen Tran,
Oh,
and
folks out there, she's not paying me, although I'd love for her to pay me anyway. But hope she's not. This isn't
yeah,
that.
no, yeah. Just to clarify, again, there's no transaction here, but I didn't even realize that I was being listed as a campaign consultant. I I met Sheng when she ran for city council in District 4, and said, you want to be a part of something great, something positive. And I always loved to support women of color. And
Mhm.
so I started working on her campaign in the beginning for 3 weeks. And then I realized that this is not the person for me, not for Oakland, her
Why
leadership. And
something happened that made you just go, and run, or was it just more like,
it was,
okay,
it was the spirit of the leadership, in terms of vindictive.
ah, okay,
And,
so
and,
I
and that
gotta,
has,
I gotta ask you to drill down on that. What do you mean?
yeah, I mean, any person who does any work in this city, unfortunately, that's the word that they use to describe our mayor. It's vindictive in terms of having a list of people who are not blind loyalists to her, and there will be consequences. And when she ran for mayor, but anyway, so backing up, I realized that
That's
wasn't going
like
to be good
Godfather
for me.
level, don't you think?
Come again?
That's like Godfather level, don't you think?
What is being
Like
vindictive?
I have this list of people I'm gonna basically list,
Yeah. Well,
right?
that's what scared me. That's what scared me. And actually said that I have a blacklist of folks who, if they ever cross me, I got dirt on them, and I can work the media to get them. And I was like, that's dark. That's dark.
And Shang specifically said this to you
She's in a group meeting.
in a group meeting. There's like more than one person who heard her say that.
I mean, there's a couple people, but it wasn't just me and her. It's just like, so it made me feel like you gotta watch your back because you don't know who's watching, right? And I was like, is this service? Is this service if someone who is a leader is going to be has this narrow lens of personal relationships? If and that made me think, okay, so if you don't have any purpose for her, then what will she do? And if you're of value of her, then what do you have to do?
Hmm.
And so it took me less than 3 weeks to experience that, and that left a dis it was distasteful for me. And so for media to now continue to call me former campaign consultant for her really doesn't do it justice, my experience working
Yeah.
with her. And
Oh, and by
she
the way, tell them what you were doing for the campaign, because that's the other thing that struck me. It wasn't like,
Oh, I
yeah,
it wasn't like I was a strategist. Yeah, I wasn't a strategist. I wasn't the campaign manager. I was just supporting going to meet and greets. I was tabling and what can you really do the first few weeks of a meeting, right? Of a campaign. Everyone's touching everything and working on bios and policies. And so but like it was I was definitely not this political operative for her. I wasn't her right hand person, but I was an Oaklander, and that had value. And also I was a community leader, and I wanted to see again women of color succeed. But it was just made me think that this was about became quickly about power than
hmm.
than service. You know,
What did she say, if anything, to you when you, or how did you announce that you weren't going to be a part anymore?
I think I sat on it and I wrote an email, and then it was an amicable parting. In terms I said this isn't going to work, and just thank you for your support. And because I didn't feel comfortable telling her the why, and because of what I heard, and that should be understandable. And I have to say that to this day, I find her to be an extremely charismatic person,
Mm-hmm.
and her story is extremely compelling. Where she came from and how she worked hard to get to where she's at,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really a true American story. And so I admire her fight, but I think she gets confused with who she's fighting with, and,
Yeah.
who's her enemy, and who's for her. And in this work, anyone is for the community is for each other, right? Anyone who, and also being for the community, being for Oakland, there's a humility that it requires. It requires us to be able to disagree and not hold a grudge. It requires us to be able to provide input and actually hopefully see that input being considered in the final decision, right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
a checkbox like community engagement. And that's what I've experienced with some of our leaders, is that I appreciate folks coming to our community, but I feel like it's part of a larger chessboard of, I have to do this so I can protect myself here, and I'm and this is going to serve me down the road. But they already have their political agenda, and their agenda is to win. Their agenda is their next seat.
Yeah.
Their agenda is, you know, to protect their image. And I have to say, like, this press conference, it was already intimidating enough to go by myself in front of what feels like the world be completely exposed and human, and say, I'm here to tell the truth, and I'm here to answer the questions to the best of my abilities. And because no one is doing it, and Oakland deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
Oakland deserves to know, that we are not in a good place, that there has never been more division and polarity in our local Bay Area Democratic region. There are kingmakers and queen makers,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no real dialogue that's being happened. What kind of world do we live in where over 90% of voters and constituents are Democrats, in which our leaders call their own constituents right wingers,
Yeah. Yeah.
right wing extremists, you know,
Hey,
election deniers. Yeah.
let's have some fun. Let's hug the cactus. And the cactus is,
Well, I'm not used to being a prickly person, but so I
well,
like.
you're not a prickly person, of course not, but sometimes you have to hug prickly things
Yes, yes,
in order to get the assholes out of the way. So my
yes,
point is, let's do that. Let's hug the cactus because
yeah.
uh, there's a lot of flotsam and jetsam going around
Mhm.
about, like, for example, Elvin Brown, who I'm not calling an asshole. I don't know him, but he is a viewer, and he says, and so how much money did the DeLongs donate to Jennifer Tran?
Mhm.
And you addressed that. I think there was some number discrepancy that you told me
Yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So Alvin's doing you a favor here. He's giving you an opportunity to set the record straight right here.
Yeah, I recorded the entire press conference that I'm going to put on my website. Thanks, Elvin, for that question. And so there were 3 family donations from the Duangs, 3,300. And I said it when Dan Noyes asked me the question. I heard him say 30,000. So I was like, no, no one gave 30,000, but call me a bad Asian, but couldn't do the math. They usually say like Asians are good at math, but 33
I
times
don't know where
4.
this
Yeah,
comes from.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know where this comes from. I remember way back in 1979 when Newsweek had this article about Asians being the model minority, and I was at Skyline, and I knew as Wendy Chung, and I said, Wendy, I mean, most folks I know who happen to be Asian are stoners. What the heck are they talking about? Mom,
Yeah, in
I just,
Oakland.
you
Maybe
know,
they make us
I don't
different
know
in
what's going
Oakland.
on, all right. I'm
Maybe
like,
make us different in Oakland. Yeah,
gee.
yeah. And
I'm anyway. Go ahead.
yeah. Was it earlier you asked me what I was like looking at? There's, I think it was Oakland side that put how much money the Duangs donated, to Rob Bonta, to Nikki Bass, to John, like all these politicians in the last 20 years. And like
You
the
mean
question,
1C3 that I prefer not be mentioned on my program, but that's okay.
oh
Uh,
no, I'm just saying the question is how
People
much
can't
the
stand
Duong,
Oakland.
yeah, the Duongs donated to me, and
Right.
they donated to me because there's currently no Vietnamese person in Congress. They wanted that representation. And
Hmm.
it took me forever to get it. Like, can you support my campaign? In which they're like, you have no chance winning. You have no chance winning. So oftentimes, as you know, people give to candidates who think they have a chance of winning. And we're like, well, we're going to give it to you because we know that you are for the community. And so David, his wife,
Hmm.
and I don't always handle the finances, but it was either Michael or Andy donated. But they just gave because they wanted to see me stay in the fight. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Mhm.
reason why, folks, I'll explain my animus is that it's very, very succinct. First of all, the publication has had a history of going after African American men in politics or politicos through one of their so-called reporters I won't mention. They do who, but it's always politically focused, and yet they're a 501c3, which is prohibited from politically partisan rhetoric. So they, city side and Oregon side, decide they're going to back progressive causes and people. They say they're not tied to politicians in their website, but they are. I uncovered a donor party they had, which attracted not one but five Oakland council members. It was a Brown Act violation in late
Mhm.
2022. It's on zenireport.com. And I'm really tired. And plus, then they have no black writers at all. Zero. Now, when they called to ask me for my comment regarding the Coliseum, I treated them with respect and gave them the answer. But the way they operate has got to stop. They should turn it into a for-profit. All right. So they're and have better relations with people who look like me outside of when they're politicians and taking their money. So there it is, and there it is, straight no chaser, folks, out there. Now continuing. So basically, you're saying that what Dan Noyes wrote on his website was inaccurate.
Let me show you. I just had to pull it up right here because it says uh, they asked me how many, right? And so, like I said, it's not uncommon for the candidate not to know how many people give because you're hopefully raising a lot of money. But I said that no more. It was at four, and so it says here that he put, and I recorded it. I said four individuals, no more than four individual maxed out to my contribution. So he put here it was David Jung, Michael Duong, David Duong, and Linda Duong. And because it's a max donation, so he had to remove the second one. So I only had three donations
Mm.
from the family. So I said four, but I remember one was taken away because he already maxed out. So 3,300 times three, again, him, his wife, and Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And like again, being laughing at myself, hugging the cactus, Elvin. If you can excuse me. So 33, I'm using my calculator right times three. Uh
That
90, 99, yeah, 9,900. 9,900. And so and mind you, the context that was happening, Zenny, Elvin, and whoever's listening to, I'm giving this report
so $9,900.
9,900.
Gotcha.
So not 13,000, which at that time when I heard him speak, I heard 32. But he was just hovering over me, just
Well, he's a
answer,
big guy,
you know.
so.
What?
He's a big guy.
Yeah, but all the other reporters were about
Dan and I have known each other a long time. We've gone back and forth on this. We're now working together as, I think it's not, well, unofficially colleagues, because there are things he's gotten wrong and so on. And he thinks there are things that I've gotten wrong or done enough of, and I get that. Love him anyway, because as I said to Dan in DM this morning, I love to argue. I mean,
Yes, it's
okay,
one thing to argue, and it's another thing to spread to have leading questions.
exactly, exactly.
Another thing to actually incriminate folks, which is a big problem. Like Dan Noyes specifically said, given your father's guilt for money laundering, I was like, wait a minute. He's like, are you going to step down from the chamber? Wait, that's libel,
Mhm.
because the Public Ethics Commission, which is an independent commission of Oakland residents, made this report in 2020. Nothing came of it. No charges were filed. So what are you talking about given your father's guilt?
Mhm.
Isn't that then making not only my father, but me implicated in this larger FBI investigation, creating and planting doubt
Yeah.
into the
So
general voters?
what you're saying though is that the investigation was uh, never reached a point where anybody was punished for anything. Is what you're saying?
Yes. And I didn't know about it until the FBI raid.
Hmm.
I've never read it, right? And so every single question was, are you saying you didn't know? Yeah, I already said I didn't know about it. But these questions are creating an environment in which folks who weren't at the press conference and didn't hear my statement on the culture of corruption in Oakland to then connect these dots that have no business being connected. He asked me, are you being investigated by the FBI? Have they called you? No. But now the public thinks that I should be. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So that is extremely a dangerous place to put anyone in, given that
Mm.
this is an FBI investigation, and this is again leading to guilty by association, which I was extremely vocal about the other day, and I challenged at least 4 lies that were reported, on my Twitter account, my X account.
I want to share with you an interview that I did with my good friend, Oakland District 1 Councilmember Dan Kalb in this September 26th of 2020 about this very subject,
Hmm.
and allow you to hear what he said about this matter. Uh, and it is right here. If I can, right here, and it's there, right here. This is where he's actually presenting the document that reporters today have went to,
Hmm.
and he went point by point with me as best he could over what it said, and his answers were quite revealing.
Hmm.
Here we go. Time out of respect. It's 18 pages. I just scroll down, and I'm not sure if you're looking here, but just since
whatever the allegation is, I'm absolutely thrilled that the Public Ethics Commission is doing its job and has the resources to do its job to find out what the facts are and to hold people accountable if anybody did anything wrong. And that absolutely is their job, and I support their effort 100%.
I think it's important to make clear something that hasn't been made clear. You're not the defendant. The defendant is Hook Hong Tran. It says right in black and white.
Yeah, I guess it's some of the contributors and the Wong family, I guess, who are the alleged money launderers. I don't know the details of the investigation, and whatever happens, happens. If there is a need for, I guess that a few of these contributors gave a little bit of money to my old committees from several years ago, nothing recent. And if the city feels that they were wrong, they were illegal contributions, then I, of course, will do whatever I'm required to do, whatever I should do to kind of dispose of that and get the money to the city or to whoever. But until that investigation is over, there's nothing for me to do. I didn't do anything wrong, and so let's just move on and make sure they have a full investigation. We should not impede their investigation. We should not play politics with their investigation.
I agree. This book that was written, it says in 2019, the City of Oakland's Public Ethics Commission launched an investigation of possible violations of the Oakland Campaign Reform Act. And also, I want to make clear, Dan, you've been instrumental in helping build the ethics commissions. It's not like you're on the outside of it, right?
Yeah, no, it's been one of my top priorities in my first term here, and we got a ballot measure through a stakeholder process. It got on the ballot. It passed with about 3/4 of the vote. Very proud of that. And then we did a follow-up ordinance to give them even more authority, which they have now. And I'm glad they're exercising that authority. And it's very important to keep arm's length. That city council members, all elected officials, should keep at arm's length of the Public Ethics Commission. So I'm not going to be getting in their way. I'm happy to provide any information if they have any follow-up information they want from me, and let it take its course, and then we'll see what happens. And if some contributor broke the law, then they should be held accountable.
And it says to further that investigation, the PEC used its pre-litigation investigatory powers granted by Oakland Municipal Code to issue investigative subpoenas regarding several individuals, including respondent Phuc Hong Tran. And then it says the investigation concerns suspected campaign money laundering activity by agents of a major city contractor, California Waste Solutions, as you said, owned and managed by members of the Duong family, including David Duong and Andy Duong and their associates. The laundering scheme spans several election cycles and involves the use of multiple straw donors. These are alleged, making contributions to several different candidate-controlled committees. The straw donors made their donations at the behest of the scheme's authors and are reported as the true donors on public campaign finance filings, but were surreptitiously reimbursed for their contributions. These are also alleged. The authors of this scheme engaged in this activity in a deliberate attempt to circumvent various restrictions on the true source and amount of campaign donations. Petitioner has issued subpoenas in this matter to identify all the authors and participants in this scheme, as well as the extent of the laundering activity. And then it goes on and it gets down to the parties that are involved. And then it mentions that Phuc Tran is insurance agent based in Chinatown, also was the president of the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce, and then Jennifer Tran, daughter, is a currently executive director. Then it goes down to where I think where it mentions you is here, and other, not just you, but it doesn't mention you as being involved, but as being apparently the annoying recipient, but allegedly. But it says respondent. This is Mr. Tran was the president of the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce at least as of 2016, mentions his daughter, Jennifer Tran, who is the current executive director. And then it also reads that Tran was a campaign consultant to Sheng Thao for Oakland City Council,
which is not true.
A committee with a suspect cluster in this case. What suspect cluster means, I do not know. And so it says, and then it goes on to say that Tran contributed $5,000 to the McElhaney Legal Defense Committee.
I'm pausing that for one, just to emphasize that we now know that was 2020, September 26th. But we now know Jennifer was not a consultant. So let's finish, because what Dan says toward the end, I think, should really give everybody pause. Go ahead.
That was made on the same day. And then it goes down on to say that, note that Phuc Hong Tran's contributions to the Able Guillen in 2018 to Thao, mentions Dan, Councilmember Calvin, then the former Councilmember Brooks committees are also part of suspect clusters at issue in this case. And I know the term suspect clusters, there needs to be a definition in this. It's not. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know the details about what is in there. I know there's some allegation that I got a few contributions back in 2016, and prior to that in 2013, I guess. And again, if those are proven true, then those who did anything wrong should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. We should not, let this go by. I'm glad there's an investigation going on, and let's see what happens. And if the City Ethics Commission or anybody else or the court says that once this is all done, that all those who receive the contributions need to kind of give them up to the city or whomever, then by all means we'll do that. Let this investigation play its term out. Let them have a full investigation. elected officials should not be getting in the way of that in any way whatsoever. And then let it get done as soon as possible, and let's see what the result is.
And so, they say something about the Fook lunch and why. I don't know why they actually wrote this the way that they did. I don't think it's funny, but whoever wrote it intended it to be that, and I think it's a very unprofessional act. I'll just say that right now, and it colors this entire effort as far as I'm concerned when you write something like that. Do you know anything about this lunch?
I'm not sure what you talked. I did have a lunch with a handful of people from the Chinese American and Vietnamese American business community. A small lunch. It was really like 10 people maybe. Back must have been 4 years ago or thereabouts.
Yeah, they said according to your committee records, all the potentially launder checks potentially it received were in a single bundle.
Well, there wasn't any bundles. I mean, people paid separately, and I didn't receive any. My fundraiser got them, but yeah, I don't know the details. All we know is that we got checks that seemed to be all up in the up, and just like any other contribution. And again, if a small number of them were inappropriate, then I want to find that out and make sure the people who did anything illegal, if there were anybody, are held accountable. Absolutely.
I have a powerful concern here, and I'm just going to be very blunt. I don't like that this came up in the middle of the election, and I believe that there should be my powerful demand to the city council is to change this to have something where there's no appearance of using government and against a person who is running for re-election.
Right.
You could have held this off until after the election.
Yeah, it's not for me to judge when the Ethics Commission decides to release things or make things public, or what the schedule is of their public meetings or what have you. I will say that when we wrote the ballot measure, based on input from a lot of stakeholders, including good government advocates, we said that any preliminary investigation, the first phase of it, would be kept confidential for the very reason you mentioned, or that's one of the reasons. However, once there's some level of evidence, what we might have an analogy to probable cause, then they get to the next phases, and at that point, that could become public if the Ethics Commission wants to do that at one of their meetings. And that's apparently what happened here. I don't have any details.
And I'll stop right there because he said that's apparently what happened here, but it wasn't. But I showed that because Dan said that all the donations looked normal to him and his colleagues. There wasn't anything not out of whack, out of the norm. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't been reported in the media today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. And that's why
it's important to provide
and also I didn't one clarification before. Right. The way it was worded was insulting.
I was just going to say that.
I'm sorry, they should be flogged. I say that then, I say it to this day, almost 4 years later. If anybody sees something like this, you tag it as racist, demand that the court rewrite it. I don't care what has to be done, because that's indicative of a bigger problem, which very well may be tainting this entire matter. Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say there's definitely some cultural insensitivity, but you called it definitely it was more targeted. But to think about an immigrant community in which people are learning about the importance of representation and civic engagement, is it a problem for people to huddle and translate to each other and show me how this is done? It's to make that questionable is, again, allowing us to focus on a moment rather than seeing the larger piece here, pulling the lens back. And I can't remove Elvin Brown's question around how much money did the Duongs donate to Jennifer Tran, but the question should be on, okay, how much money has folks donated to my campaign compared to my opponent's campaign? I raised 1/10 of what Latifah Simon has raised, and what I raised has been legal. And hopefully what she has raised has been legal too, but thinking about the political agenda that's driving, right? Because this is the concern: financial contributions, political agendas, and corruption. I'm talking about the corruption of the systems that is allowing us to elect leaders who are not held accountable, who are backpedaling on policies, uh, who are also catering to self-interests, whether you call them, powerful donors or powerful unions or other folks with self-interest. But you're questioning me over and over about a legal donation.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing this the way that I did it.
Family members. Meanwhile, my opponent Latifah Simon gets paid more than $556,000 as an advisor to Netflix CEO wife Patricia Quillen.
Mm-hmm.
What is the question in terms of what is BART director Latifah Simon doing that's so important, in which she is receiving $50,000 a month, and you're asking me about $9,900. You're asking me, am I going to return that money? Yeah.
But if I may, my friend, I think my advice to you as a friend is leave her alone, because here's what I'm saying: if the truth based on what Dan said is just dealt with, Mercy hug the cactus, then you just point to our exchange and say, hey, look, it's Zenny, right?
That's not enough.
No, it isn't. Hear me out. Work with me here. It is enough, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because my point is this: you're listed on the court document as executive director, which means you can say right now what happened back then and confirm what Dan was saying, right?
I confirmed it, and the media is still running.
Now we're the media. The media's right here.
Yeah, but I'm saying that every day, this is why I'm here.
Yeah,
every day, lay people are not turning to Zenny 62.
No, but they will though.
They better.
Right.
They are turning to.
So let's forget that. Let's deal with the right now, right here. Okay, right here and now, as Jesus Jones would say, right here, right now.
Yeah.
Cool song, right here, right now. Feinstein used to use that song at her campaign stuff. But anyway, right here, right now. Was Dan right? There was nothing that was wrong, right? We were listening. Okay, cool. Okay, and so what was
still being used?
I know. Forget the used part. Forget that part. Because you give fuel to other people who are going to say, "Oh, she's just blaming it or deflecting." Okay, forget it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to deflect. The documents you have and the statements, all right, that are out there that people don't see. Okay, which they should see, because some people want to build a certain picture. All right. Mm-hmm. Dan gave a clue to the real story, which is, from his standpoint, there was no story, right?
No, he said that there was guilt, there was a violation.
Well, no, but I'm saying that he said if there was. Okay.
But at my press conference, he didn't say if.
I'm talking about Dan Noyes. You're fixated on
Dan. Oh, he didn't say Dan Kalb. Dan Kalb. Got it.
It's only Dan I care about right now.
All right.
The man I had on my program that uttered the very words that clear you, and you want to give, credence to people who are listening to criticism that you basically then say isn't true. If it's not true, have the courage right here to just deal with it and say, hey, look, here is what happened. Don't blame somebody else. Mm-hmm. Here is what happened. Okay? Mm-hmm. So what he is saying is that the checks that he got from Chinese and Vietnamese at this luncheon, did you know about the lunch?
No, I didn't get to the lunch part. I was just looking at where my father was implicated in terms of the checks.
Back then, do you remember the lunch at all? Do you? Okay, cool.
I mean,
all right.
I said I read it.
Mm-hmm.
I read it just this week and have had conversations with my dad. And I said, look, if there's anything that you've done wrong, he says, then I will pay for the consequences. But I didn't.
Right, and that's what forget. That was September 26th of 2020. Mm-hmm. This is almost 4 years later.
and still no wrongdoing has
Mhm.
been. I mean, how many times can you turn this egg, until you find, oh, there's a corner, right? I mean,
Mhm, mhm,
after
mhm.
4 years.
You can say that, and in the meantime, I'm receiving racial epithets, and I am,
Which is wrong.
and my and our community, who we have dedicated our work to, and I'm not just saying the Vietnamese community, the
Hmm.
Oakland community as well, is only following the headlines, Zenny. And this is absolutely hurtful when we have nothing to do with it. And I'm
Right.
saying, I don't know. This is based on what my father has told me, but I'm saying I have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And I've had to make it very clear that what's happening to this FBI raid not only has nothing to do with me, but it's actually distracting us from what's really happening under the hood.
Right.
And what's happening under the hood is that we have elected officials who have problematic track records that have and will continue to impact our communities. More store closures, more people looking over their shoulders saying, I don't really feel like dealing with Oakland. I'm going to go to Alameda. You
Hmm.
know, more folks asking, we keep raising taxes, and yet why is our quality of life like this?
Hmm.
So that's what's really hard for me. Not not only having to set the record straight, and I'm glad I have this opportunity to set the record straight, but that it's impacting everyday people.
Hmm.
That's the only reason why we should even be talking. What are we going to do for the people? What what sensible solutions are we going to have for safety, for homelessness, for small businesses, around transparency? And instead, folks are trying to pin me to this larger drama, which is a drama that hits every major American city in this country. And we have a chance to say, do we want more of the same, regardless of what shape and color, gender it comes in? Or do we want someone to have the courage to step up and saying, enough is enough? The people are hurting from the flats to the hills, from Albany all the way to San Leandro. It is not just about Oakland anymore. It's about District 12. When are we going to come together and say that this is too much to bear on our heart?
I think Alvin is saying,
Yeah, it's
he,
it's it's
yeah.
it's it's hard. It's hard for folks to explain to their children
Yep.
why is it that they're watching, folks engage in human trafficking, sex trafficking at 7 in the morning. You know, so let's bring back our dignity. And that starts with who we elect.
So, yeah.
And
Elvin
I'm
Brown,
not.
he said, I'm not trying to disrespect the councilwoman, talking about Carol Fife.
Okay. Yeah.
Are you a councilwoman? You
No,
didn't
I'm
tell
not. I was like, I'm not a councilwoman.
me you're not. Just teasing. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to disrespect the councilwoman, he writes, but I'm from West Oakland here since 1969, and my monthly trash bill is $165 for the 96-gallon can. Ooh, that's pretty high. Yeah.
Mhm.
So he's basically underscoring what you're saying.
Yeah. My mom, when she came here as a teenager refugee, grew up in Acorn projects. Like
Hmm.
it's people are trying to think about how they can, rub two pennies together to make
Yeah.
some magic out of that.
Yep.
And meanwhile, like I said, we're dealing with a larger culture of corruption that's easily conflated with financial corruption. I'm talking about lack of accountability. I'm talking about lack of transparency. And to that person's part, the folks who are running our cities and our government are so far removed from the reality of this 96-gallon can. My, I don't want to make it about my personal story. And that's another thing with this brand of progressivism too, is that the playbook talks about your stories, your hardship. Everybody's got a sad story, but what are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix these problems? And I see ordinary people doing extraordinary things to provide not just for their family, their loved ones, but for the community all over the city. And yet, we're giving praise and attention to our electeds. And so it's been really harmful to already see our city fall into decline.
Now
Right.
let's shift gears and talk about affordable housing.
Yeah.
What's your thought about if you were elected as Congresswoman? How would you address the problem of affordable housing and homelessness? Do you realize the Supreme Court just ruled today,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
that hey, they can take people off the street because it's not legal for them to be there if they're homeless, which is shocking.
Hmm. I think it's so homelessness. I can run my entire campaign on homelessness, but homelessness is one of those issues that has also been divisive as well. People don't want folks on the streets because they want to be able to look out the window. I have someone calling me every week talking about how folks are shooting up outside their window while they're sleeping. It's really hard. And they're like, can these folks get the help that they need? Like I I'm working as a nurse and I have to have these really late shifts. I'm really tired. And I've worked on rehousing people into community cabins, right? This is in Little Saigon, but also work across the cities because I am on a number of boards. But we need to imagine a city where everyone is housed. It's not about getting people off the streets. It's about not having to choose between human civil rights and human rights, right? I think ACLU's been one of the driving organizations pushing back against the legislation that is criminalizing folks who are unhoused. But part of my the Modern Cities Act, is what I'm going to push forth within my first 100 days. That's what I said during a press conference too. None of that was recorded, but homelessness, we need to recognize that we have a problem in which 1 in 3 unhoused people are in California.
Mm-hmm.
We can't solve it in one of the wealthiest regions in the entire world. Then it's you have to point to the complexity of it and also the leadership too. And so when it comes to homelessness, I think that we have to be brave and say it's not about us wanting to criminalize. We need to change that and bring more humanity to it. It's not about criminalizing unhoused people, but people shouldn't be living in destitution and abject poverty, right? In which they are becoming more and more ill every day. And based on the UCSF report, we see that the major problem has to do with mental health challenges. People are sick. The longer they're out there, they're going to be dependent on substances. And the majority of folks are 800, 1,000, less than $1,000 away from being unhoused. And so my policy is about working to open quality mental health hospitals, right? And I don't want to say from scratch. Let's look at buildings that are vacant, malls that are not being utilized. Let's acquire existing housing inventory so that we can build. That's more sustainable, right? So that we can build not only mental health hospitals, but we can also build drug addiction facilities. Some folks are like, we shouldn't use the word drug addiction, but it's like, we need to normalize addiction as a real thing, especially in communities of color. You know, who hasn't been affected by alcoholism? Who hasn't been affected by other forms of coping mechanisms that really suffocates our communities? So we need to get people well, and we need to expand the federal housing voucher program to provide people just that buffer and work. We need to be able to say, if you need help with housing, that's fine, but you got to work too, and we'll find you work, right? I think this idea of universality without conditions is something that we have to be brave against and say, this is people do want to have a purpose and work, and if they can't, then we'll find something. But to have us choose between these polarities is a problem. You asked me, so that's homelessness, different from affordable housing. Affordable housing is extremely costly, especially when we're looking at inflation, we're looking at supply chain, we're looking at the bids, and it takes a really long time. So there are models of nonprofits. Take Lao Family for existence for example, in which they are working with federal grants to acquire existing housing, and they are building and housing people within 6 months. Meanwhile, we're waiting a decade to house people.
Wow. Let's close it right there and have you back. But also, let's make this announcement, because my friend Jennifer Tran is now a Zenny 62 Media personality. And what that means is that after she goes through her vlog training, she can make a vlog about her news any type she wants to. She is not the first person who is running for office to have this distinction among others. We had Lauren Taylor for a time. We had Derek Sue when he was running for mayor. And so you join and a number of other people. And of course, anyone who wants to be interviewed, who, finds the whole vlogging thing a little intimidating, I don't know why, come on our show, tell your story. But also, Zenny 62 Media, if you find you don't have any material about you, that's an entirely other side of the matter. Okay? That's us building things for you. You hire Zenny 62 Media. We do it right. We don't do it like, say, the Chronicle and Hearst Media Services, where they say, we don't make any money off our news media, but we're doing this. But in point of fact, they have not one, not two, not three, but 4 different digital media organizations, 3 of which do reputation management, that actually make up to $10 million for them. Did you know that, Jen? Okay. And they say, hey, we use all of our Hearst News Organization publications as part of our service to you as the client. All right. So that's the real truth right there. All right. That's the real truth. What I say with Zenny 62 Media is this: there's something called sponsored content. You hire us for sponsored content, we make it for you. People know it's sponsored. You make your own decisions as to whether or not you want to hear the person, but let the person have their say. Let them tell their truth, not one version of it. That's wrong. That is completely wrong. Everybody is entitled to online democracy. That's what this is about. All right? It really is. But online democracy says, hey, look, if you don't know how to build your social media platforms, we'll build them for you, because you need to have that kind of comprehensive coverage. It has nothing to do with me saying anything. That's not what this is, folks. For those of you trying to twist crap, that's not what this is. There are a lot of people. I helped Craig Devereaux when he left KPIX. I put him here on. Also made his first blog site. I did it for the great Glenn Dickey. Sports, got him on here, helped him make his first website. I even did it for Richard Lieberman. People can't stand him, but Richard and I went to Skyline together. Go Titans, all right? So I helped my buddy as much as sometimes he irritates the crap out of me. I have helped many people in media and journalism, and I don't call myself a journalist, I'm a blogger, get themselves established online because they don't know what to do, where to go, or how to push their content out there. I do it for everybody. De La Fuente for mayor, proud to have them as a client because they didn't know how to get their content out and elevate it. Bartlett, Ben, Berkeley Councilmember, same doggone thing. All right, all of these folks and many more need help. And guess what? They're getting disseminated and blasted by organizations like 46 Mile, which is owned by Hearst Company, which takes out this running ad against Ben Bartlett based on an 8-year-old publication that the Chronicle wrote because Ben, said to a police officer, hey, I'm a council member, which he knows he's been through the call. He did his punishment through the public. Okay, done, gone. But why have a sponsored ad running it all the time when you search for him, or most of the time? All right, especially during an election year, and then not reporting it to the FPPC. Did you hear what I said? Okay, so stop these games. Stop finding like I got this thing and I got to say something bad. Only it turned out it's nothing. Deal with the real problems. Hey, you know what? like I said, I love to argue. So I'll tell you in a second where I'm coming from, and I'll tell you somewhere you're coming from too. So get over it and be respectful to the doctor here, especially when you're doing conferences and everything. Be respectful to her and other people running for office, regardless of what they look like or anything else. All right. Doctor, thank you very much and welcome aboard. We look forward to getting you established. You already have your link so you can tell your story. Maybe I'll connect you with Derek Sue and he can help you out. Hey, Derek, did you hear that?
Well, thank you so much, Zenny, for this opportunity and getting to the heart of the matter for folks who are interested in getting to the nitty gritty. Obviously, they can follow me on X.
Here, I'm sorry.
They can follow me on X and www.drtran.congress.
Yeah. Look at this.
Yeah,
now, the Oakland Airport Hilton will vacate its lease with the Port of Oakland. Would you?
That was a thought that came to my mind because we're thinking about places in which we would house folks, and that's going to require coordination of leadership from all levels of government. But you can imagine there's going to be pushback. But we have to think of the greater good. I think that we need to identify sites that has capacities and also partner with hospitals, because not just housing people, it's treating them, providing them quality services. Because during the Reagan era, a lot of them were closed because of the abuse that was happening. And so when we imagine modern cities, we have to really center human dignity in that too. So, but way ahead of you, for sure. Thank you.
And he says, thank you, Dr. Tran. And Dominic Hernandez says, good luck running for Congress, Jennifer. And we say,
yes, thank you. Thank you. Please reach out and we can get a coffee.
Doctor, you don't have to move a muscle. I got this. Everybody subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube. Bookmark ZennyReport.com. Hey, check out also, because it's coming up, San Diego Comic-Con News.com. Yeah, I said it right here. I'm so proud of that. All right. Woo, go right. All right. That ends this broadcast stream. All right, folks. Live long and prosper in your world. All right. Thank you. That ends this stream.